It's time for a little comedy, a little content, and a lot of conversation. It's the Geno Jones Show, exclusively right here on YouTube. And now here's your host, Geno Jones.
Hello, everybody. What's happening? My name is Geno Jones. That's me right there. That's how you spell Geno. Welcome to the daily edition of the Geno Jones Daily Variety Show. Wow, what a 24-hour period we have just lived through. All right, I want to thank you for joining me. If you're not watching this in real time, I want to thank you for watching. But if you are watching in real time, I want to thank you also. I want to thank my guest yesterday, Sean Mitchell. Sean Mitchell, social justice warrior. He is a activist, I guess you could say activist, media personality, currently in law school, plans to continue or have a career on the bench as a judge and hopefully a federal judge. It was one of his goals. So if you missed yesterday's episode, you got to see it. It was fire, straight fire. 13 days, everybody. 13 days. I don't know. These 13 days might seem like 1,300 years. 13 days until the clear and present danger, the enemy of the state, the mad wannabe king, leaves the White House. Yes, that mad wannabe king, your ass is, whether you want to or not, gonna be out of here. Out of here. You can leave now. As a matter of fact, you know, sometimes, like when you were in school, the end of the year, and you've taken all your final exams and everything, and you might go to class and the teacher's like, you know what? You can go. You guys can, you know what? It's no need of you being here. The school year is over. All your assignments are in. Your grades are in. You can't change your grade one way or another. The school year is over. You guys can just go. You know what? It's cool. Just leave. So, dude, 1,600, you buy. Because, you know, he hadn't been working. Hadn't been at the White House. Now, he did come back to Washington yesterday to lead an insurrection. Yes, lead an insurrection. You're saying, Geno, what is an insurrection? Well, an insurrection is a violent uprising to overthrow the government. And guess who led that violent uprising, that insurrection? The president of the United States, the commander-in-chief. He incited and led a insurrection. He led an insurrection. Gave a speech for about an hour on Lincoln Mall in that area, saying, listen, I want you to march to the Capitol, and I'm going to go with you. And we're going to give those Republicans who have, I'm paraphrasing, who have courage, we're going to cheer them on and root them on. And the ones who don't have courage, we want to give them courage and backbone and all of that. And immediately after he said that, now keep in mind, he's the kind of dude that, you know, in my old neighborhood on the south side of Chicago, and, you know, I'm sure this happens wherever you live, wherever you grew up as a kid. You know, there was always that one person that was the instigator, that was always talking trash, always talking ish. Oh, man, I'm going to do this. Oh, man, y'all, hold me back. Hold me back, man. What? He would be the one to throw a rock, then hide his hand, and then turn and run. And everybody is fighting and tussling. And you look around, it's like, yo, what? Where's he at? You were doing all the tough talking. You ready to start an insurrection. But then when it goes down, you are nowhere to be found. You're back in the comforts, the confines and the safety of the White House in the Oval Office. Yeah, that kind of coward. Start a fight, throw a rock, then hide his hand and run. That's where we are. That is where we are. So I want to start off today by, I've given this, I've said this before. It's a famous quote from a famous woman, the late Maya Angelou. She said, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them the first time. I'll say it again. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time they show you who they are. Kind of paraphrasing that last little part, but that was it. That's the gist of the message. And this dude has showed us, he's shown not just America, he's shown the world who he has been since before he got in the White House. He has shown America that he was a flat out racist when he was the Pied Piper for that racist birther movement, saying that Barack Obama was not, the former president, was not born in America, which was bull. He knew that was a lie. Many people knew it was a lie. They knew it was a lie. Some people knew it, some people didn't. Some people really knew it at their heart, but they believed the lie. Because what was behind the lie, they believed the lie because they bought into the bigotry and the racism and the hate and the white supremacist ideology that fueled that lie. And that he used to divide people, to generate this white nationalist ideological uprising that culminated, that exploded on camera in front of the world yesterday. Like I said, when the chickens came home to roost, those chickens that you sent out to go into other people's yard, those same chickens came back home to roost. That same energy, that same hateful, divisive, destructive, deadly, white nationalist, white supremacist hate and energy, it came back to your house. Yes, the people's house, the U.S. Capitol, the United States Capitol, while you had in session in the Senate and the House of Representatives, virtually all the members who were basically there to, and really yesterday, the bottom line was, it was basically the only thing that was supposed to happen yesterday. Let's think of an award show. Let's think about the Soul Train Music Awards, the BET Awards, the Oscars, the Grammys. The bottom line was that these politicians in the Senate and the House, their only job was to basically co-sign what the voters decided on November 3rd and on January 5th. It's like, I hand you an envelope, I'm one of the presenters, and I'm given an envelope. And the vice president's job was basically to read the envelope. Whatever name is on the envelope, whatever state's on the envelope, dude, just read the envelope. We don't want your opinion. We don't need your opinion. We don't care what you're wearing. Your only job, you have one job, and that one job is to read the envelope, damn it. The state of Carolina, the state of South Carolina was won by an evil man. The state of Illinois was won by Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. 40, I forgot in California, I want to say, I don't think, well, there's more than 40. Actually, I think it's 55 electoral votes. I don't have the numbers in front of me. You got 40 million people in California. State of California, with this 55 electoral votes, or how many ever they have, elect Joseph Robinette Biden and Kamala Harris, president and vice president elect. That was it. That was all that was supposed to happen. There was no way, there's no constitutional, legal way that process was going to be stopped yesterday. The House of Representatives, the Senate could not stop it. They could go ahead and say, well, we want to dispute what the electors, the votes in Illinois or Pennsylvania or Georgia or Arizona or Nevada, because we think that there was voter fraud or too much voter they call it irregularity, too many voter irregularities. So we need an audit. Now we done had 3 states. Georgia had 3 recounts. Pennsylvania had like at least 2, 3 recounts, audits, all of that. All these states did. That was a ruse. A ruse is like a con. All right? But what America also saw, what the world saw was this huge, let me say this. You know what the world saw yesterday? Something that black people in America, black folks, we've been seeing and saying for centuries, for years, decades, that there are 2 forms of justice. There are 2 systems of justice, that white people in America are treated entirely different when it comes to policing and police officers and the criminal justice system than black people and brown people and Native American people. Entirely different. Now, America saw what happened. They saw white nationalists in Charlottesville, Virginia, about 3 years ago. And they saw the white nationalists with tiki torches, and Jews were not replacers, and marching all over the stuff. And one of them ran over and killed a young woman named Heather Heyer, and almost killed a couple other people. Then we saw what happened. We saw white nationalists storm the state capital of Michigan, the state of Michigan, in Lansing, Michigan, with long guns, semi-automatic weapons, weapons of war. Because the state of Michigan, for some odd reason, allows people to enter the Capitol building, the state Capitol building in Michigan, with weapons, with guns, with long guns, with semi-automatic weapons. But you know what you can't bring in the State House in Michigan? You can't bring a banner. You can't bring a banner, but you can bring a semi-automatic weapon. That's a whole nother conversation. And yesterday, you saw that same energy. You saw the same white nationalists in general. Actually, I'm sure it's probably some of the same ones that was in Charlottesville and up in Michigan. Some of the same, you know, the usual suspects. I'm not even going to dignify them, with their name. The same group of white nationalists that bought into that same white supremacist ideology. 10,000 marched on D.C., stormed the Capitol, tore up the Capitol, broke windows, went into the offices of senators and representatives, House representatives, stole items, walked out with lecterns. The Speaker of the House, one dude walked out with the lectern, posing on camera, smiling. One dude sat on Nancy Pelosi's office, stole items off her desk, and sat at her desk and put his feet up on the desk. Well, she ain't doing the job, and it ain't her office, it's the people's office. I'm a patriot. And Now, can you imagine? Now, what I want you to do, I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to imagine 10,000 black people storm the state capitol. I'm sorry. Well, no. 10,000 black people storm the U.S. Capitol. Barge their way in. They're scaling the wall like Spider-Man, scaling the walls of the Capitol. They storm the doors. They break out windows. They're climbing through the windows like a cat burglar. They threaten security officers that the senators and the members of the House of Representatives, they have to be taken to secure locations. They're sitting or lying down under the floor, hiding for fear of their life. Can you imagine? No, you know why you can't imagine that? Because those black people, they would have never got inside the Capitol. They would have never gotten inside the Capitol. They wouldn't even gotten up the stairs alive. And we know that for a fact. That same Capitol, back in June, you had rows and rows of police officers and men and I don't know, I think they were probably federal officers in camouflage, but they didn't have name tags or anything. Camouflage uniforms and riot gear. That every step of the Capitol, you had officers, rows, 15, 20, probably 30 in a row. You could not get up the steps. They didn't even and these were peaceful Black Lives Matter protesters. In the summer, Lafayette Square in D.C., you had peaceful Black Lives Matter protesters, and then you had basically secret federal police officers and other police officers throwing tear gas, beating people with canes, cleared out that whole area of Lafayette Square, so your boy could stand there holding the Bible upside down and look like it was backwards, because I didn't see any name, did you? I didn't see where it said Holy Bible upside down. But he was holding the Bible upside down. And it looks like he was holding it backwards. Now, the last I heard, 50 some odd people arrested? So you had thousands of people that engaged in sedition. Sedition is a crime. Like I said, sedition is conducting or engage in the act, committing an act, speech, and committing acts of violence to overthrow the government. Guess what? Like I said, sedition is a felony. It's a federal crime, a felony that can get you 20 years in jail. So we saw thousands of people commit open acts of sedition, led by the dude that's supposed, quote unquote, the president. A lot of folks were allowed to go back to their hotel room and wake up and order their continental breakfast. Now the FBI is saying, now there's like a man, and we want to talk to these people. You want to talk to them? No, you don't want to talk to them. The only thing you want to say is that you have the right to remain silent. You have the right to get an attorney because you are under arrest. That's the only conversation you need to be having. That's it. No, I don't need to talk to you. I need to hold you accountable. These people have to be held accountable. Because let me explain something to you. People will get away with as much as you let them get away with. Let me say that again. People, and it is a fact of life, in any walk of life. If you're in a bad relationship with a person that's cheating on you or just lying to you, stealing your money or whatever, work people mistreating you on your job or wherever, people will get away with as much as you let them get away with. But the minute you put your foot down, the minute you say, hold on, stop, hold on. The jig is up. The BS is over. What we're not going to do is this. But if those people, those criminals, those thugs, let's call them what they were, those terrorists, what you saw when you hear about Islamic terrorism, what you saw was domestic white nationalist terrorism. The textbook definition of it. You saw it in 4K or 5K, if you got a 4 or 5K HD color TV. You saw it. That's the textbook definition of what sedition is in America. A violent uprising to literally overthrow the government. Because they did. They stormed the U.S. Capitol, went into the House and Senate chambers, interrupted the business of the Senate and the House of Representatives. That is, you couldn't, an episode, there was a movie, there used to be a TV show I used to love, came on, called 24. Kiefer Sutherland was the star. This was, there wasn't an episode of 24 where you saw this. You would see the Islamic Muslim, quote unquote, Muslim terrorist. No, this was homegrown, American, rube, uneducated, and some folks semi-educated. And that's a whole nother conversation, education. Because just because you went to a school to charge you $70,000 a year for tuition, and you pass these racially biased entrance exams and the SAT and ACT tests, which are racially biased, just because you did well or you could hire a tutor to coach you to get through the test, doesn't mean that you're smart. There are many forms of intelligence. My grandfather used to talk about educated fools. Now, you may have went to school for 12 years and got decent grades and learned how to take tests and memorize stuff enough to take a test. Doesn't mean that you're necessarily intelligent. But I digress. I don't want to get sidetracked. What you saw was an attempt to violently overthrow the United States government. And if these people are not held accountable, same way you had, I'm here in Charleston, South Carolina. There was a kid this summer. There was a black kid, 17, 18 years old. My youngest daughter knew of him because, as a matter of fact, one of the protests that they had right after George Floyd was killed, I joined her in the protest. I went with her because, A, I wanted to make sure that she was going to be safe. If something jumped off, then I was going to be there. And if something was going to jump off and something was going to happen, before it could happen to her, you'd have to go through me. I don't care who it was. So, but anyway, so this kid, they were rural police officers, and it was this kid. And he was the only black kid. I don't know, maybe 10, 12 kids, maybe a little more. They were sitting on the ground, like almost in a circle, legs folded. And the kid, the young man, very well spoken. Mr. Officers, I'm paraphrasing, which we here peacefully, can we get along? He wanted to shake their hand. He was like, can you help us? He was really just asking for the police officers to have some level of humanity and compassion. Do you know they arrested that kid for that? He never raised his voice. He didn't use any profanity. He approached him with a level of compassion and empathy and humanity that they did not show him. And what did he get for it? He was arrested. Not even the other white kids. They were allowed to sit. They didn't move because the police wanted them to move. And he just wanted to have a conversation and say, we're here because we felt what happened was wrong. And he was not confrontational because I saw this. I'm not telling you what somebody told me. I'm telling you what I saw with my own eyes. I saw the video. It went viral this summer. So, yes, black Americans have always been treated differently by police officers. Let's be honest. Local police departments, do you know how and why police departments were originally formed here in America? They were formed basically to track down runaway slaves and to recover, if they could, runaway slaves to bring them back to the people who enslaved them. They were called, actually, slave patrols. Google local slave patrols. Your original local police officers, law enforcement, were slave patrols. That's what they were called. So at the core of local policing was always created to control, to oppress, to limit the movement, the freedom, the rights of people to look like me. That's not my opinion. That's a fact that you can easily research for yourself. That's an easy Google search, slave patrols, the origins of local policing, police departments in America. That's easy. That's not even your homework assignment. Heck, I did it for you. But what we saw yesterday, this insurrection, this violent attempt to overthrow the government, I think it could have been a dry run, because they weren't allowed to bring guns with them. But what happens if they say, man, it was that easy to get into the Capitol? What if they say, you know what, we don't care about what? They didn't care about breaking the law yesterday. So who's to say next time they will say, hey, look, we don't care about breaking the law. We're going to bring our long guns with us. We don't care. We're willing to die. Who's to say that won't who's to say that can't happen? Did you think what you saw yesterday, did you think you would live to see that? Did you really think? You know, the last time that the U.S. Capitol was breached to that level was the War of 1812. Actually, in 1814, which was the War of 1812. That was the last time the U.S. Capitol was basically stormed and breached like that. That's almost 200. That's over 200 years. That's 207 years. You do the math. So here's my bottom line. I'm not going to keep you real long today. Yes, people are asking. People are demanding that Vice President Mike Pence and the president's cabinet. Now, what do you mean? What do you mean, Geno, when you say the president's cabinet? When you hear like the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of the Treasury, the head of Secretary of Education, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, those cabinet level positions for the different heads of different governmental departments, though that's considered the cabinet. So the 25th Amendment allows the vice president to get together with the cabinet, and if a majority of the cabinet members, the president's cabinet members, along with the vice president, say, listen, he's just mentally, he's incapacitated. There's something wrong with him. We don't feel that he is able to conduct his duties as president. He's mentally impaired, emotionally impaired. It could be a health reason. You know, if he had to go to, let's say if he had to have a procedure to where he was given anesthesia, to where he was literally unconscious. It happens. As a matter of fact, it happened to George W. Bush. They invoked, just briefly, the 25th Amendment. So the vice president became the president. So just in case during the procedure something went bad, something went wrong, then the vice president would have the authority and the power to maintain, to basically to do the job of the president, because the president couldn't do it. So the 25th Amendment does allow for the president to say, hey, you know what, dude, something wrong with you, so we got this. Whether you want to or not, we decided we got this. Now, the president, he can appeal it, and then what would happen, then the vice president and the cabinet would go to the House of Representatives and to the Senate and make their case, and then the House of Representatives, the Congress would vote and say, yeah, they're right, get your ass out of here, because you're crazy. So it could happen. Now, I'm going to make a bold prediction, even though I found something out tonight, right before I came on. Apparently, according to a lot of news sources, Vice President Mike Pence, who was pissed last night. I don't know if you saw Mike Pence when he first started talking, when they were basically trying to, like I said, the whole thing last night was they were just supposed to go through this formality of confirming, or not confirming, but just not validating. I want to use the right term. But the bottom line is their job was just to go ahead formally, look at all the results. Every state, they basically sent in the quote unquote their electors, say, hey, listen, he won this state. Here's the envelope. California, he won California, he won Illinois. And their job basically was just to formally verify that, yes, Joe Biden is the president of the United States. Yes, he won. We've got all the data. Here it is. This state sent it in, say, yes, the votes have been counted. Everything's official. We had the recounts. Joe Biden won state of New York, state of California, state of Georgia. That's really all it was. Until it wasn't. It was more than that. But yes, the 25th Amendment is something real, but Vice President Pence apparently doesn't want to do that. But he was pissed last night. So before they had the session in Congress, I should say in the Senate, because the Vice President is the president of the Senate. So he led the hearing, or he was the head of the whole procedure that they had last night. And just before he started what they were doing last night, he was trembling. He was visibly enraged. He was just trying to, you could see his body tense up, and it was like trembling, trying to suppress the anger. He was pissed. I'm like, dude, I guess he's like, dude, all right, you making me look bad now. I've been your ride or die, man. I've been your co-pilot. I've sat here and enabled. Yes, Mike Pence. Yes, you, Senator Tom Cruise. Yes, Lindsey Graham and Tim Scott. Yes, Josh Hawley in Arkansas. Yes, all you Republicans, you all senators and in the House of Representatives, you have enabled and you have energized and emboldened. And some of you all believe in this anyway. You all subscribe to the same, many of you subscribe to the same ideology of white nationalism. And if you don't, you co-signed, you might as well, because you co-signed it by enabling him and this hate through your policy and your behavior and your words, continuing this big lie that, the election, it was taken from us, it was stolen, and all these illegal votes. So when black people don't vote for you, when black people don't vote for Republicans, then our votes are illegal. Then it was voter fraud, because there's no way that black people could vote for a party whose policies, actions, and words basically say that you don't have any rights, no rights at all. As a matter of fact, the whole concept of white supremacy, really, you could argue is just to eliminate black folks. We don't want you to vote. We don't want you to have any rights. Shouldn't have any rights. Shouldn't have any freedoms. You shouldn't have the right to vote. Shouldn't have the right to speak. As a matter of fact, you shouldn't even be free. You should be back on a plantation generating wealth through your free labor. Strict constitutionalists, there's a term they talk about let's go back to the original Constitution. I talked about it last night. In the original draft of the Constitution, black people were not human. They were 3/5 human, 3/5 human. And the only people that had power, the only people who were allowed to vote and decide who could write the laws that affected everybody, the language said the only people who could vote were white male landowners. Translate that, white, wealthy men. Black people were 3/5 human. There's nowhere in that original Constitution were women mentioned at all. So you had your sexism and misogyny and your patriarchy and your racism. Native Americans weren't mentioned in there. Asian Americans, none of that. White male landowners were the only people who could vote and make decisions about this democracy originally. And that's what many people, your Ted Cruz, that's what, ideally, they would love to take us back to those days. But we ain't going back to those days. Never, ever, ever, never, ever, never, ever, ever, never. Some people don't like that. And they've used many people in power, many people. And this was Trump's play. He used primarily race, the engine and the energy of racism and sexism. That was at the root of the energy that he tapped into. He knew that there were tens of millions of Americans who bought into the ideology of white nationalism and white supremacy, which was a con, because whiteness is a made-up concept or construct, some people will say. It was just a made-up concept. It's just some bullshit that some people created in the late 1600s, like over in Europe, like in 1670 something, literally. Search it, Google it. The whole concept of whiteness was created in Europe and imported here, to where a small handful of people with power and wealth could manipulate the masses. But we got to go ahead. We got to make the majority of these poor, quote unquote, whites who will never have the wealth and power, because if we got to spread it out, that's less for us. So we don't want them, who are not quite as educated, whose kids who weren't part of the aristocratic white Anglo-Saxon person clique, the aristocratic, wealthy, the poor working class. In slavery, it would be like the overseers. The overseers never became plantation owners. They never became rich. They were just like your 8 to 4, 9 to 5 work. But what happened is the genius of white supremacy was they brainwashed those white overseers to think that you still better than them ends. Yeah, them ends, well, you better than them. As a matter of fact, we're going to let you oversee them, and you can be brutal, and you can beat the hell out of them, and you can kill them, and keep them in line, and keep them working, generating me free wealth. And we'll give you a little something, we'll give you a little money. But no, you're not going to own. You're not going to be able to enslave people. You're not going to have the wealth that I have to have a big plantation, and to have a plantation with 200, 300, 400 people, enslaved people, working, picking cotton and growing rice, generating wealth. For me, no, it was never going to happen. This has been a con all along. Like I said, wealthy white people on that level have never given a shit about poor white folks, poor working class white people. Never, and still don't. Donald Trump, what did he call people to go to the military? Losers and suckers. That's what he said about men and women in the military. It goes to show you. He thinks that you're a sucker. He said, what do you get out of it? You go to the military, you fight, you get killed. What do you get to show for it? It's all about money. To him, there's no honor, duty, character. Throw that shit out the window. So so now I want to close a couple quick messages. So to to white America, who, and some of y'all probably will still be in denial. If you're wondering, you hear your kids talking about white privilege, and you say, oh, there's no such thing as white privilege. What is white privilege? I grew up hard and blah, 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 and I'm only making $40,000 a year, blah, blah, blah. There's no white privilege. Cut the TV on. All right? Did you see what you saw last night when 10,000 white people stormed the Capitol? 4 people are dead, unfortunately. 1 woman got shot. Out of 10,000 plus people. Now, just 10,000 black people. Do you think that the police would have handled them the same way? Giving people what? You have police posing with these terrorists, taking selfies, kind of moved out the way, letting them walk through in certain areas, using restraint when they say de-escalating. Well, I sure saw the police last night in D.C. doing everything they could to de-escalate the situation. How is it that you got 10,000 angry terrorists that stormed the Capitol and none of these police feared for their lives? But you had a 16-year-old kid in Chicago named Laquan, a 17-year-old kid, Laquan McDonald, that was walking away from a police officer, skipping away. And the police officer shot him not 1 time, 16 times, and said he feared for his life and he was walking away from you. Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin, was shot in the back 7 times. You had a police officer that was holding the back of his shirt and shot him 7 times in the back in front of his kids that was sitting in the back seat of the car. And he said, well, I didn't know what he had in the car. I feared for my life because he could have had a gun. But you had control of his shirt and you had to shoot him 7 times. Not 1 time, 7 times. And you let him get to the car? So none of these police officers feared for their life. I didn't see not 1 police officer on that Capitol Mall pull out a gun. And once they got inside the Senate chambers and the House chambers, I saw some pictures and video of, you had, I guess, some of the Capitol Police behind the door, and they had their guns pulled, but they didn't fire. They didn't shoot anybody. So how was it that you had 10,000 terrorists that stormed and broke out windows in the U.S. Capitol, and none of those police officers apparently feared for their life enough for them to start shooting? But black folks, unarmed black people, walking away from the police or sleeping in their own bed, are murdered all the time. And the first thing I hear police officers say in those situations, those police officers who commit acts of murder and police brutality, I feared for my life. So what you saw was an example of white privilege, because white people don't see other white people as a threat. But there are certain white people, there's in law enforcement, in law, who work at department stores, just walking down the street, who work in banks if I want to get a loan, who will just see my body, will see me because of my skin, and see and view me as a threat just because I look the way I look. For no other reason. I don't even have to open my mouth. Just my mere presence, my bodily presence, will somehow instill this sense of imminent danger and fear that I fear for my life because I saw a black dude. Oh, now he could be wearing a $1,000 blazer and $1,200 shoes. Don't matter. I saw a black dude. I saw a black woman. I fear for my life. That is the example of white privilege. That is what black people have been telling you. We have been telling you about racism and that white supremacy and white nationalism is strong, and it never went away. It just kind of went underground. And when your boy took office, he was like, come on out, racists, come on out and play. Hey, white nationalists, hey, white supremacists, come on out and play. Come on out in the open, it's okay. Hey, you don't need to put a hood on no more. Come on, show your face, be proud, put your chest out, put your chest in it when you call somebody the N-word, or when you say white power, when you take the Confederate flag in the U.S. Capitol, the flag that represented treason, the flag that represented the Confederate Army that went to war, where you had 600,000 Americans that died because the Confederate Army wanted to overthrow the government, didn't want to end slavery. And that flag was inside the United States Capitol yesterday. So yes, so in case, if you're wondering, if anybody tells you that there's not a such thing as white privilege, then they are lying. And they're either in denial or ignorant. I can't think of any other two reasons. That's just the bottom line. Because you saw it on display. The world saw what white privilege looks like. So now what are we going to do about it? I heard President-elect Joe Biden speak on it, who actually said his granddaughter said, wow, Dad, I'm paraphrasing, they didn't treat the Black Lives Matter protesters in D.C. like that back in June. Thank you to young lady, Vice President-elect Biden's granddaughter. I can't remember her name right now, but thank you, young lady, for telling your grandfather that. I don't want to say opening his eyes, because I know a lot of people have opened his eyes, but just I think that in that moment that was important, because I think it really shook him. Not that he wasn't shook. He was a senator. He worked in that Capitol building for about 4 decades. He understands. But man, when your kids or your grandkids, when they say, "Hey, wait a minute, that's not fair. Did you see? Why did they treat those black people so differently, who weren't violent at all? And these people who were violent, they weren't treated in any type of violent way. What? That's not right. That's wrong." So this young woman had the compassion, the empathy, the humanity, the decency, and the intelligence to know something is wrong with America. Because the insurrection that we saw yesterday, that is who we are. Oh yeah, that's exactly who we are as Americans. That's who America is. And that's who America has been. Now, America is also Joe Biden's granddaughter. We are both. But we are at a moment in time where we got to decide, so which one, because we can't continue, we can't be both. We are at a moment in time where we got to pick one right now. And which one are we going to be? Are we going to be the white nationalist and continue to espouse and to expand and basically to self-destruct under this ignorant premise of white supremacy and white nationalism? Or are we going to have the compassion, the empathy, the humanity, the decency, the emotional intelligence of Joe Biden's granddaughter? Which one are we going to do? What are you going to do? I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to use my platforms to continue to speak truth to power, to continue to try to open people's eyes, and continue to encourage and remind everybody, for those of us who want to put an end to all of this hate, to put an end, I don't know if we can ever end white nationalism, because it's an ideology and it's hard to kill an ideology, but we can make it so uncool, and we can make sure that we create laws and we put lawmakers, like I said, to change the laws. Last night I said to change the laws. You've got to change the lawmakers so we can make sure that we put laws on the books to where if you want to continue, if you want to engage in behavior that's rooted in the ideology of white nationalism and white supremacy and bigotry in all forms, religious bigotry, misogyny, sexism, patriarchy, homophobia, any type of hate in any form, if you want to engage in it, and if that hate drives your criminal behavior, that you will be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. We have to make sure that we create punishment that will, as they say, deter. We want to have a deterrent. So when other people see that person being punished for that behavior, it will deter or keep them from doing the same thing and to engaging in that same behavior. So that's why I said yesterday's show, you had Reverend, and once again, congratulations to Reverend Raphael Warnock in Georgia and John Ossoff. They both won the Senate runoff seat. So now they are senators-elect. So now we have 50 Democratic senators, 50 Republican senators, and the tie-breaking vote in the U.S. Senate is going to be the Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, because the Vice President is the President of the Senate. But the work is, January 20th, the work just begins. That we have to stay engaged. We got to mobilize. We have to organize. We have to register more voters. We've got to just, either form new grassroots organizations or support organizations wherever you live. Shout out to Stacey Abrams, what she's done with Fair Fight Georgia and organizing and registering and mobilizing voters. She's been doing this for over a decade now. And shout out to Latasha Brown and Brother Cliff. I mispronounced his last name wrong last night, but I can't think. Albright, Cliff Albright. Brother Cliff Albright, my bad, man. So congratulations to Latasha Brown, Cliff Albright. Black voters matter. And there's so many other nonprofit organizations, and you got your Divine Nine, all your Greek organizations, your fraternities, sororities, and there's other grassroots community organizations that have been so engaged in making sure that people not just register to vote and then get out and vote, and educating people and explaining to them why it's important to vote. Because when you don't vote, you allow people who don't have your best interests. You allow people who buy into believe in the ideology of white supremacy and white nationalism, which is about hate and oppression and worse for black people and people of color, people who want to oppress you, people who really want your destruction. Because people who believe in that, the ideology of white nationalism and the ideology of white supremacy, that's what they really want for people to look like me. When you don't vote, you allow people with that ideology to sit and become lawmakers and write legislation and to write laws, to codify laws, and to vote on those laws and to turn that legislation into law. They get to create laws that can continue to suppress your vote and to allow police officers to continue to be abusive and to kill and murder and maim with impunity and not be held accountable. And where companies can continue to discriminate, and insurance companies can basically do what they do. They can practice redlining and charge you more for your insurance just because you're black, and charge you more. Banks can charge you more for a loan, even though your credit score is better than a white person's, and your income is more, and your debt to income ratio is better than a white person. But banks can still discriminate and still will discriminate unless we change the people who write the laws. It means you got to change the lawmakers. And the only way you can change the lawmakers is by voting. Thank you for letting me be a part of your life. As always, God bless each and every one of you. God, most of all, thank you for letting me do this episode of the Geno Jones Daily Variety Show. please subscribe. Shout out to all my new subscribers. First time, if you just kind of, somebody turns you on to the show, make sure you please subscribe to my channel. Please tell everybody you know, even people you don't like, even people who may not agree with me and think I'm crazy. That's fine. You can hate me, just watch. If you love me, I love you. If you hate me, that's your problem. But you can still watch me. You can watch me to hate me. Drive your blood pressure up and have you mad and screaming, cussing at your TV, your smart TV or your tablet or your phone. I'm good with that. You do you, because that's a you problem, not a me problem. And I will never, like I teach I will never allow a you problem to become a me problem. But I appreciate you watching. So subscribe to the Geno Jones channel right here, my YouTube channel. Also, share the episodes. Binge watch the episodes. Tell everybody about them. And if you would like to be a sponsor of my daily variety show, I would be honored. I'd love to have you as a sponsor. If you want to advertise, small business owners, large business owners, corporations, whatever, whoever. If you want to be, if you have a good service or, maybe a project, something you're promoting. You could be an author, you could be an artist, whatever. Reach out to me, okay? We'd love to have you be a part of the Geno Jones family right here on the Geno Jones Show. So you can email me at my Gmail, Geno Jones Show. That's how you spell Geno with an E, Geno Jones Show at Gmail. Or leave me a message here on my YouTube channel. All right? Thank you, everybody. Mother, I love you. I got a special guest tomorrow. It's going to be a young man that... it's going to be a really inspirational story. A young man that he turned his pain into power. He turned his pain, his personal pain, into purpose to help other young people who were hurting in a different kind of way. And I'm really proud of this young man. So he'll be my guest along with his parents tomorrow. Special guest. I want you to check this story out. You may have seen a story on some of the major news channels, maybe news shows, Good Morning America, the CBS News morning show, NBC Nightly News. Lester Holt did a story about a young man named C.J. Matthews out of Atlanta. So, young C.J. and his family, young C.J. Matthews is going to be my guest tomorrow. I don't want you to miss any episode, but I don't want you to miss this episode. It'll make you really feel good. I think many people could learn a lot from this young man about compassion, empathy, and humanity. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that's going to save this democracy is that we collectively, we've got to have so much more compassion, empathy, and humanity. But one of the ways you start by doing that is that when you have made a mistake, when you have wronged somebody, you have to be able to own your mistake, acknowledge it, and apologize and say, I'm sorry. Saying I'm sorry is a sign of strength. I know you've had people for years, especially men, make you think that, oh, you don't know, man, you apologize, you a punk, you a pussy, you weak. No, it's just the opposite. Saying I'm sorry and acknowledging that I made a mistake and apologizing and attempting to atone and rectify the wrongs that you committed, the wrongs that you did, is a sign of strength. You know what? It's on me. My bad. I apologize. I'm sorry that I hurt you, that I offended you. That was not my purpose, or it might have been my purpose, but I see the error of my ways. I was wrong. I'm sorry. It takes a real big person to do it. It takes a real big person to do that, because it's easy to not apologize. That's the easiest thing to do. But to apologize, that means you have to look in the mirror and you have to be honest with yourself. Because you can BS everybody else, but you may think that you're BSing yourself, but when you go to bed at night, you're going to have a quiet moment, or one time you're going to look in the mirror and you're going to realize I'm living a lie. That I've done some things, I've done some horrible things, I've done some wrong things, I've done some bad things. I need to own that. And I need to try to change that karma, because the law of karma is real. Irregardless of what you believe in, whoever your God is, whoever he or she is, even if you don't believe in God, the law of karma is real. And as my grandfather, Conway Jones, used to say, Jeannie, if you keep living long enough, you'll see. The energy that you put out into the world comes right back to you. Or sometimes on the way back to you, that energy may stop and affect somebody you love. Maybe you can have children or a spouse or a sister or a brother. So be very careful. Karma is real. The energy that you send out comes back to you. It will eventually. It may take it a minute. You may think that you're getting away and skating for a long time, but I promise you, I guarantee you, the energy, good and bad, the law of karma in the universe is real. I love you. I really do. We'll see you Friday right here. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Give me some feedback. Let me know what you think. All right, everybody. Thanks again.
Subscribe and tune in to the next episode of The Geno Jones Show, exclusively right here on YouTube. It's time for a little comedy, a little content, and a lot of conversation. It's The Geno Jones Show, exclusively right here on YouTube. Now here's your host, Geno Jones.